got to see some of these adults here as kids, as Nate and I kind of helped teach. Nate taught, I kind of came and helped him at the time. But yet some of y'all are now adults and have babies of your own, so I didn't think I was getting old, but I'm definitely getting older. It does come fast. The one thing Galen was wrong about, we were, and he kind of mentioned it, we weren't always the best kids. We stayed dirty. He mentioned Mudfest, and I don't know if y'all know what that is, but we would plow up Downey Hill, put water on it, ice down some Diet Pepsis in a John Boat, and play in the mud for hours. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger. We had t-shirts, we had CDs. It was a big thing. It was a lot of fun. We stayed dirty. I didn't ever think about four of us. Glad you brought that up. It's a good thing. It's rare. I'm not a preacher. It's really just three of us. I'm not a preacher by any means. So if y'all are expecting a good preacher today, y'all are going to miss out. There was a prayer a request before we start. When I walked in, I don't see her here, Brandon. She's back there. She was scared of me. I don't know if I just didn't have the beard last time, did I? I don't know. She said she was scared of me. I'm like the least intimidating person ever. But it was a similar story to actually what my daughter was saying earlier today. She's saying her friends from Carlisle, correct? Brandon, is that what she said? My daughter was telling me two people from McCracken also did this. Well, I think two people from McCracken are confirmed that they ran off together. Two teenagers, 16 and 14. Well, apparently there are two teenagers also missing from Carlisle County. Phone, she said, I'm getting this second hand, so I'm giving it to you third hand, so if I get some information wrong, I apologize. Thought they were in a crash because of Live 360. They went out, there was no crash, but they left their phone, so just pray for a safe return to these teenagers. I know a lot of times when we're young, we think we know a lot of things, and sometimes we don't know as much as we think we do, and just pray for their safe return and whatever they need to make them feel welcome whenever they get back home, that they're provided by the community and the local churches so that they know that they are loved and desired. So we're going to lift that up in prayer as well today. All right. So you guys have heard the story, I'm sure more than once, of how Nate and I became friends. Y'all have heard the Nate and Cody origin story. Y'all probably know it better than I do, at least his version of it. But like the Gospels, if you read the Gospels, there's slight differences in the Gospels, right? But it's not really because they're contradicting each other. It's because these are different men that come from different walks of life, that grew up differently, have different jobs, and so their perception of events are slightly different. And so whenever they announce it or they write it slightly different so that you can kind of get a full picture of what's going on. So here is Cody O'Neill version of the Nate and Cody origin story. Which will end up being more of just like the story of my life, I guess. But so my mom and dad got a divorce whenever I was 5, and we moved to Farley. And I went to Farley Elementary School from first and second grade. In second grade, I moved to Reedland. I don't know if anybody is familiar with that, but that is legit two different sides of the flood wall. I say flood wall, normally it's railroad tracks, but this is an actual flood wall separates Farley and Reedland kids. So as a Farley kid coming to Reedland, you're not very popular. Went to Reedland second, third grade. I think I might have had one friend. I was a little bit shy. Believe it or not, that was a real thing. Fourth grade, a kid comes from Olean, New York, This kid has got like these ears that stick out like this. And he got this little button nose that kind of like sticks up a little bit. I've got pictures, guys. I legit have pictures. His nose sticks up, his ears stuck out, and he had like a military flat top. And I loved him right off the bat. Like I was like, I might like this kid. He's kind of goofy looking. I don't have many friends, and he don't know any better. So we can be friends. Nate and I started hanging out 4th, 5th grade, and I convinced somehow he got recruited to a different team in baseball, and I somehow convinced them to drop him and let him be on my baseball team. He doesn't know that I had anything to do with that. He was going to be with the good kids, the kids that were good at baseball. I was better at baseball than these good kids at baseball, but my team wasn't very good. I needed Nate. We had to recruit to build a dynasty. And so I go get Nate. I let Nate know really quickly that he's not the best. I'm the best. And we go on and we wipe the floors with some people. These 2 stinky kids that had great personalities with each other. At least we thought we did. Not extremely popular because I was from Farley. He was a northerner from Olean, New York. And we became friends. In 6th grade, both of us get a little bit of popularity. We were spending the night at each other's house almost every other night. We're at each other's house, especially during the summertime. Fell asleep to Boys to Men. Don't play anything into that. That was just popular at the time, Boys to Men. We could sing every single song to the Boys to Men 2 album. We harmonized quite poorly, but we did harmonize together in singing Boys to Men in his older brother Joe's waterbed. Like that was kind of the cool thing. Joe had a waterbed. And we would sit outside on the trampoline all night long and just look up and talk about whatever 16-year-olds talk about, or 6th graders talk about. Well, my mom decided that we needed to have a fresh start. And so my mom moved us to Houston, Texas. And I didn't know whatever happened to Nate after that. It was kind of abrupt. It was around Valentine's Day, 1996. We up and moved in the middle of the night out of Redding and moved to Texas. And some of y'all, I know Scott, you've probably been through Houston driving a truck, right? Houston's kind of tough. Houston's a rough place, especially for a kid like me. It's really hard to make friends in Texas. I had an opportunity. My sister ended up getting pregnant, and she decided she's going to move back home to be with my dad. At the time, I really didn't grow up with my dad. It wasn't that he wasn't there. He worked swing shift. That's a sacrifice that a lot of people make. And I understood that as I got older about the sacrifice, but at the time I didn't really know my dad. So I moved back with him randomly for 7th grade to start at Ballard. And I knew some of the kids at Ballard from years ago. I had went to play t-ball with, had the same babysitter, but still started a new school. This is basically the 4th or 5th school that I'd started in about as many years. It was just really difficult. Luckily, there were some good people at Ballard that kind of helped me get out of my shell, get a little bit more confidence. Really enjoyed my time there. Made a lot of good friends. Whenever I graduated high school, went off to college, my dad ends up getting sick, and he had terminal cancer, and he's in the hospital. He was in the hospital 1 month, 1 day, but while he was in the hospital, I came like I normally do sometime during the day. I came there. And he says, "You'll never guess who came and saw me today." And I do not know why, but I knew exactly who came and saw me. I said, "Nathan Vance." Just random thought. Hadn't heard from Nathan since I was in 6th grade. Hadn't thought about Nathan much, probably, except reliving the glory baseball years. since 6th grade, and I did. I was like, Nathan Vance. He said, sure was. Like, how'd you guess that? He said, how'd you know? I said, well, I knew Joe preached down here, so I, just kind of an assumption, maybe Nate came. And he said, yeah. He said that they would be at Calvary if you'd like to come see them. I said, okay. Well, at the time, I didn't realize, I didn't accept that my dad had terminal cancer. Thought I had a lot more time with him. I said, yeah, I'd love to. So I left, show up here, walk in the doors, go straight to Nate. First time I'd seen him in about 6 or 7 years. And I think the first conversation we had was about wrestling, if you could believe it. We had walked 2 different walks of life, 2 different paths we had walked. I got introduced to the Dowdies, who ended up being monumental in my life at that time. Like God had placed them in my life perfectly, Coy and Matt, perfectly at that time, so that whenever my dad passed away, I had friends that would carry me through it. I moved to Texas. He had ended up moving to Michigan. Went to a Catholic school. Became a rapper. Did he ever tell you about that part of his life? Does nobody else know that? Oh, I no longer have it, but I used to have an album or a CD of Nathan and his friend rapping when he was back in high school. He was pretty good, by the way. Really good song lyric. Like he can write. I think I still have something pop up on Facebook Memories where he had written some song lyrics down and shared them with me. I'll have to see if I can find that and share that with you guys. While we were in college, that's all he did. I don't even know if he went to class. I didn't go to class, so I'm not sure if he went to class either. We skipped a lot and went and ate at Martha's, ate breakfast at Martha's, but he wrote songs all the time. That's all he did, write songs. He eventually started writing books, wrote a book, got it published. But yeah, so Nate was a rapper, by the way, in high school. So Nate pursued rap. I went to Texas, which was not pursuing rap in any way. Came back to a small town. He still grew up in a big town, had a lot of friends, and somehow, some way, I told him, man, if you ever wanted to, you should move back. Like, I would love to have you. We hung out one time when my dad was sick. And I was like, dude, I'd love to have you back. And I think it was, I feel bad. His mom was sitting in the back, and it was almost, she had to say goodbye to her son as he moved away. But Nate moves back, calls me a year later and says, hey man, I'm at this apartment and there's some people that I don't know that are kind of a little bit odd. Do you think you can come pick me up? I said, can you stand outside? He said, absolutely. I said, I'll be there in a minute. So I went and picked Nate up. He had an apartment in college, somewhere on campus. He stayed on my couch for the next year. Both him and I are massive snorers. So that's not very good for the rest of the people in the apartments. The following year, he moves in with Galen's son and now his brother-in-law. And I guess kind of the rest is history. Nate and I have become best friends. Our lives have completely intertwined in different ways. And ultimately what keeps, in my mind, what I keep thinking is that God had sent a big-eared kid from Olean, New York to sit with a stinky kid from Farley at Reedland so that they could become friends. So eventually what would happen is we were driving an hour every Wednesday to teach kids about church, about God. And then as we got older, every conversation we have, it gets driven to God. All of our relationships that have sustained is because God was in the center of it. And so in my mind, I know that no matter what has happened, God gave me Nathan Vance. And I believe that. Now, you don't recognize these things whenever you're going through these things. Most of the times whenever you're walking out your life, you think you're in control. You make these decisions that lead you down this path and just so happens lead you over here, and eventually this happens. My wife says all the time, there's no coincidence, there's confirmation. And it's a thing that I needed to kind of put in my mind, like there is no coincidence. God is confirming in your life that He is sending you down a certain path so that you can be where you need to be when He needs you to be there. That was a lot to be said. I hope y'all heard and understood every bit of that. But He puts you where you need to be. I can't even repeat it. It says all at one time, that's it. Oh, y'all got it the first time. But you're where you need to be because God put you there. I'll probably end up, I didn't write stuff down. I'm probably not going to stick to it. I already stuck to it. But basically in our lives, it's made up of different choices, different things that we do. We have high times, we have low times, good times, bad times. There's times where we're following and walking with God, and there's times where we're doing our own thing. But throughout our life, we need to understand that there is something that Nate says to you guys all the time. It's in Psalms. Does anybody want to repeat it? Because it's like his favorite thing to say. I know he said it to you guys. The steps of a good man are ordered of the Lord. Nate tells y'all that all the time. He tells me that all the time to the point where I'm like, dude, like just hit the repeat button. I got it. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. The steps of a good. I love it. I love that he says that because it's something that he is trying to walk out in his life. And it's an understanding that as your life takes you down specific paths, you have to remember that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. Lynn, just so you know, I've got a title this time. Last time I didn't have a title. I think y'all made one up for me. This one is God Knows What He's Doing. It's simple. God knows what He's doing. All right. So, I guess I'm going to ask you guys this. Have y'all ever walked, been thinking about life and where you're at in life and just been like, how did we get here? Kids like, yeah, I have. If the kids have, I know us adults have. I mean, I do that actually quite a bit. Like you sit there and think, like, how did I get here? What has happened to lead me to where I'm at? Why are things going astray? Why is life not where I want it to be? Sometimes you're going through things in your life and you start kind of getting mad at God. And you start saying, like, wow, why didn't He fix this? You start sitting there thinking, you could have controlled and changed all of this. Yet here we are. And you start wondering, like, does God care about the things that go on in my life to the point, or am I an afterthought? And you know what I found this Easter is that this is not an original thought at all. I'm going to turn to Mark chapter 14, verse 35. You can turn there if you'd like. It's very short, and I promise y'all probably heard it this Easter or getting prepared for Easter. But Jesus has gone up to pray, and He said, Father, everything is possible to You. He said, take this cup from me. Jesus knows what's about to happen to Him. He knows what He's about to go through. He knows that for the first time, God's not going to be able to, His Father's not going to be able to look at Him because He's going to take on the sin of the world, and He's going to turn His back to Jesus because He is carrying so much guilt and shame throughout the world. And Jesus, in his humanistic mind, He calls out and He says, Father, you can do anything. You created this world. Everything can bow down to You at Your word. Take this cup from me. I don't want to do it. Jesus' first instinct is fear. Why am I going through this? Why does this have to happen? God, You can change this. We can establish the same thing in a different way. Don't make me have to go through this. Do not turn your back on me. Please stay with me. Let's come out with a new way. That's his first thought. His first thought is God, you can do anything. Let's stop this and go a different route. But Jesus shows us the way, because that's what we're at a lot of times. I say we, I'm speaking specifically of me. I can't sit there and say I don't talk to you guys on a daily basis. I don't know where your minds or hearts are at. I'm saying as humans, as Christians, even though we know where our hope lies, we still fall into the same things, the same problems, the same ideas of why? Like, why are we doing this? God, I wish this would just be over with so I can see what your plan is. Because I'm tired of doing it right now. Jesus doesn't stop there, though. That's the best part. You can stop right there and say, Jesus understands our affliction. You can stop right there and say, Jesus understands the heartache. And he understands, and he's asking why. But he doesn't stop there, does he? He says, after he says, take this cup from me, he says, yet not what I will, but what you will. So he takes himself out. He says, God, you know what? I'm going to walk your will regardless of what it costs me. I'm going to stay focused and devoted to you. I will have faith in you so that your glory can be shown. This is Jesus, right? So this is like, you got some tiers of people in life, like he is above the top tier, right? So I mean, this is JC. He's sitting there saying, I'm scared, but you will know better than me, and I will follow it out. So in our lives, we have to know that God is in control. That God knows what he is doing whenever we go through these times in our lives. We have to remember that God is guiding us, as Nate would say, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. Because we love Jesus, God is putting us where he needs to put us, when he needs to put us, so that we can do the things that glorify him and bring honor and glory to him. And it's not about us all the time. That sometimes we must suffer. We're told all throughout the Bible that we will suffer for his name. And sometimes we're going to have to go through the suffering. We're going to have to be persistent in our persecution so that we can grow and become better Christians and bring him honor. God knows what he's doing. Amen. So, one of my favorite, guys, I'm going to just be honest. I wish I had service in here, like good service in here, because I would let this speak for me. I would let it read for me. Because I'm not very good at pronouncing certain places in the Bible, certain names, certain proper nouns in the Bible. I'm just glad I know what a proper noun is, guys. So I'm going to read a passage to you, and I want to show you the different steps of where, like, God knowing what he does know what he's doing. In Acts chapter 16, in verses 6 through 10, Paul is wanting to go somewhere. He's got it in his mind, like, all right, I got to go over here. He goes to sleep that night, the Spirit of Jesus comes, and he says, listen, Paul, that's not where you need to go. You need to go to Macedonia. So Paul wakes up, says, we're going to Macedonia. I'm going to follow where Jesus says. We're heading to Macedonia. So starting with verse 11, you want to turn the camera off right here so people don't know how bad at this I am. It says, from Troas we put out to sea and sailed straight through Samothrace, and the next day to Neapolis. From there we traveled to Philippi, a Roman colony, and a leading city of the district of Macedonia. And we stayed there several days. On the Sabbath, we went outside the city gate to the river where we expected to find a place of prayer. We sat down again to speak to a woman who had gathered there. One of those listening was a woman named Lydia, a dealer in purple cloth from the city of Thyatira, who was a worshiper of God. The Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message. When she and the members of the household were baptized, she invited us into the home. If we considered "If you consider me to be a believer in the Lord," she said, "come and stay in my house." And she persuaded us. All right, once when we were going to the place of prayer, we were met by a slave girl who had a spirit by which she predicted the future. She earned a great deal of money for her owners by fortune telling. The girl followed Paul and the rest of us, shouting, "These men are servants of the Most High God, who are telling us the way to be saved." She kept this up for many days. Finally, Paul became so troubled that he turned around and said to the spirit, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to come out of her." At that moment, the spirit left her. When the owners of the slave girl realized that the hope of making money was gone, they seized Paul and Silas and dragged them into the marketplace to face the authorities. They brought them before the magistrates and said, "These men are Jews and are throwing our city into an uproar by advocating customs unlawful for us Romans to accept or practice." The crowd joined in the attack against Paul and Silas, and the magistrates ordered them to be stripped and beaten. After they had been severely flogged, they were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. Upon receiving such orders, he put them in the innermost cells and fastened their feet in the stocks. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly, there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. At once, all the prison doors flew open, and everybody's chains came loose. The jailer woke up, and when he saw the prison doors, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners had escaped. But Paul shouted, "Do not harm yourself. We are all here." The jailer called for lights, rushed in, and fell trembling before Paul and Silas. He then brought them out and asked, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" They replied, "Believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your household." All right, that was a lot, I know. But what I like about this is you see a walk of trying to follow what Jesus told him to do. Jesus told Paul, "You need to go to Macedonia." So he goes to Macedonia, Paul and Silas. When they hit Macedonia, they're looking for a place to pray. They start praying just on the side by the river, and these women are there. One of them, Lydia, and Lydia is converted. So right off the bat, you can sit there and say that God was leading Paul and Silas for Lydia. Because they were following the will of God, Lydia became a believing Christian. So Lydia tells him, "Hey, I mean, if y'all want, we got a place to stay. Let's stay and continue on." So he goes, and he is there constantly being yelled at by this little girl. Listen, I've got little girls at my church that might have the loudest, shrilling voice I've ever heard. Makes it so loud that you want to stay outside while they're running and playing. It hurts your ears. They scream so loud. And they scream about nothing. I mean, it's literally nothing. They're screaming, right? And so if y'all been around little girls, especially in today's world, like you get sometimes like a grown man can get annoyed by a little girl pretty quick. That's my opinion. Y'all might not feel the same way. That's okay. That's my opinion. But you got a little girl yelling at them all the time, and everywhere they go, she's sitting there yelling at them. Have y'all ever seen the movie A League of Their Own? See, everybody seen that, right? Do y'all remember the little boy who's constantly going around, "You're gonna lose, you're gonna lose, Stillwell"? So this little girl is Stillwell running behind them, but she's trying to do it in a negative way because she's got an evil spirit, and she's yelling like, "These guys are going to teach you how to be saved." And eventually Paul gets so fed up with it. Like, that's what I feel. I feel like Paul eventually got annoyed. And he's like, "Oh my goodness, this has got to be a demon. This has got to be an evil spirit in this girl because she is relentless." And he turns around and he casts this demon out. So Paul, for whatever reason, that's Cody brain talking. For whatever reason, turns around and he casts this demon out of this girl. So at this point, you say that God led Paul and Silas so that Lydia could be saved, and so this little girl could have peace from a demon. Well, because he did that, the slave owners found her useless. She was making them so much money. She was putting money in their pocket because she was a fortune teller, right? So she was sitting there, and now she is useless as a slave girl, and they have cost her or them some money. So he's sitting there, and he takes them to the authorities. They beat, it says they beat and flogged him severely. So it wasn't like a little slap on the hand. I'm sure they were whipped. I'm sure they were punched. They were beaten all to pieces. And it says they put them in the innermost parts of the cell. So this is again Cody brain. I'm sitting there thinking, like, you've got a prison, the innermost part is center, right? So like that means you're the furthest away in all points from an exit. The innermost is now the furthest from an exit. And so while he's in there, Paul and Silas, and you've got all these other prisoners that are probably closer to the exit, and Paul and Silas are the innermost. All these other people are closer to the exit. You have this violent earthquake, and their chains are broken. And when the jailer wakes up, and the jailer, you don't know his story, right? So let's think about the jailer for just one quick second. Is the jailer always the jailer? Was he someone that got in trouble and got pushed down, like you are going to be in control of these people today? Do we know? No, we don't know. We don't know his story. We don't know if that was his job. We don't know if there was a rotation that other people did this job and it just so happened to be his day to work. We don't know anything about this jailer, right? But he wakes up and he doesn't see anybody because he's on the outside guarding keeping people from coming out. So he looks in and he doesn't see anybody and he's about to fall on the sword. And Paul and Silas say, hey, wait. They're all here. So when the chains fell off of these people, they did not scatter out. They came in because God was so present in that jail that they came inwards to Paul and Silas and did not scatter. And so all of a sudden the jailer goes, what do I have to do to be saved? So now you can sit there and say that Paul and Silas went to a place they didn't mean to go to, that they didn't have any intention of going to. But because Paul had a vision, he goes there. Lydia gets saved because of their coming. A girl gets a demon cast out of her so that she can live a normal life. And you don't know anything else about her. Now that she has no value to the slave owner, they may have let her go. You don't know the kind of freedom that she got just by getting released from a demon. You have no idea. And then all of a sudden now these guys have to get beaten and flogged and they're thrown into prison. They're shackled by their feet. And God is still present and says, I did this for a reason. And now you're sitting there saying, well, what's the reason? Well, you don't know if it's everybody in that jail. Everybody in the jail had an opportunity to run. They didn't. They came in. So you don't even know why they did that. Amen. And you can go even further and say, did all of this happen? Did everything with Lydia, with this little girl, with them getting beaten and flogged, with the prisoners coming in, was that the purpose? Or was it the jailer who just so happened to be on shift that day? It says, if you continue on, it says, both the jailer and his household were saved. So you go through this whole story, all of that, and the end result is the jailer and his household get saved. So you have to look back and say, how did I get here? What is going on in my life? And who is being affected by how much faith that I have? Am I showing my faith by continually to follow God, even in the midst of the bad stuff, right? So we talk about the storms in our life, but we forget that Jesus Christ is in the boat when the storm's going on. Even though we're sitting there getting tossed and turned and we're all in fear, Jesus wakes up and calms the storm. He is always in the boat when we're going through the storms of our life. And He's leading the way. He's guiding it. I'll bring up Ruth. Ruth lost her father-in-law, lost her husband, decided to stay with her mother-in-law, goes to a place that is not her home, just so happens to end up gleaning in the field of the kinsman redeemer. Marries him, is in the lineage of Jesus Christ. How do you get from one place to the other? Because God knows what He's doing. Lineage of of Jesus Christ, direct lineage of Jesus Christ. All right, think about Moses. Moses kills the Egyptian, right? And on his own, he's like, gets a little scared. I gotta run, I gotta go. He goes wandering in the desert. Ends up running into these sisters. They take him back to their homeland, to their place. Meets Jethro, marries his wife. Later is plowing the field and he sees this burning bush on top of a mountain. Whenever he comes back to set the people free, and when Pharaoh finally had enough and said, go, and even though he pursued him, now Moses could have went this way, and it would have been a lot quicker to get to where he wanted to go. But he went the way he knew, which is the way God led him the first time, which now is being covered by the Red Sea. They go through the Red Sea, but eventually where does he end up? Possibly in the exact same field that he looked up and saw the burning bush. Because he's back at Mount Sinai. The burning bush was on Mount Sinai. He takes his people back to Mount Sinai. This is the direction God wanted him to go from the beginning. So when he killed the Egyptian and he took off running in the desert, God directed him to Mount Sinai because he knew that he needed to bring the people back to Mount Sinai. God had a plan. He knew what he was doing. Moses probably thought that he just did that on his own. God directed him. Even when we think we're in control, we're not. Nate says, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. God's plan is better than ours. That's why we call it his perfect will. You know, the coolest thing to me is looking back and see where God's hand has guided me along my journey. Whenever you're sitting there and you're praying with your best friend and you're teaching Wednesday night with your best friend in the whole entire world, and you're like, how did I get here? And you look back and think of a 10-year-old boy with big ears coming to